What is up to the transparency Sunday night? Up. Thank you for the new membership. Appreciate you. All right, we're gonna get started here in just a minute. Thank you for your membership there, Iron Container. Thank you for that. And what is up, Muffy? Oh, I've been watching more testimonies since earlier. There you go. Get after it. I'm actually working on my own stuff too, so if you guys are familiar with our First Amendment rights, prior restraint, and I believe that a temporary restraining order would infringe on my First Amendment rights. So I plan on filing a motion this week to dismiss all my stuff in Denver. She works hard for the money. Crazy shit going on these YouTube streets. Yep. I mean, these people. Yeah, the witnesses are definitely annoying. I definitely used to think that. Definitely crazy streets. Dave made an apology. Somebody sent me the link. Was it last night or this morning? I think it was last night. Was it last night? Anyways, then I guess he took it down. So I don't know if he wanted to apologize, and now he takes his apology back. I have no idea. But hi, Sarah. Good evening, mates. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm sorry, but I don't want to have this live. I don't even know. I just know what it's like to be on the opposite end of that and being, accused of something that you didn't do. It's no fun. Being ganged up on is no fun. But not sure about gangbang. Haven't experienced that, so. I have no idea, Muffy. Why would you take down your apology? Who? These fickle fuckers, man. Hello, Lana and everyone else. I'm not going to be on long, and we'll go back later to watch with family doing last minute things needing to get done before Tuesday. I hear you on that. So the question I have for you guys is, do you think a temporary restraining order infringes upon my First Amendment rights? So, anyways, I do believe so. I think it is prior restraint. And then what about YouTube is where I assemble. YouTube is where I assemble. It's where I work. So again, First Amendment rights of assembly. Again, that's my case, though, not this case. All right, just gonna give it just a couple more seconds here, and I'm gonna kick this off. I actually, what is up, Canadian Mama? Um, actually, I'm going to go back and change the way that I want to label this episode because I want to hear from the doctors first, because this is all about, their testimony. Like, why couldn't this be labeled as an accident? I am done with YouTube other than you and Mia. Yeah, I'm just done with even responding to people anymore. I'll do me. I'll do my cases. What's up, crazy chick? But why did these doctors feel that this was, not an accident? Why does it have to be, Lindsay's fault or Jason's fault? If she, fell and hit her head, is it that difficult to, that this could have just been an accident that led, so let's hear what these doctors have to say.
Everybody have a seat, please. Jurors, place your lanyards on.
And you are a doctor?
Yes.
And how long have you been a doctor?
Well, including medical training since 1993, so that would be 26 years.
All right. And could you briefly describe what your background education is to be a medical doctor?
Yes, I trained at Harvard Medical School, and then I did my internship at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Boston. Then I did my residency at University of Southern California in ophthalmology. Then I did a pediatric ophthalmology fellowship at University of Michigan. Then I went into practice.
All right. And could you briefly describe what that fellowship is that you did at Michigan, the pediatric ophthalmology one?
Yes, it's a one-year pediatric ophthalmology fellowship.
And what does that mean?
Well, it's an after residency additional training that you do in order to be particularly good at the subspecialty of pediatric ophthalmology.
Okay. I think for a lot of lay people, it's confusing, the difference between optometry and ophthalmology. Can you explain the difference?
So yes, ophthalmology is a medical subspecialty. So we go to medical school for 4 years, we train as a regular doctor until we reach the point where we want to subspecialize. And optometrists, they go to 4 years of optometry school. They do general eye exams, and they have some knowledge there, and some of them are very good with that. But their exposure to complicated patients with serious medical problems and things of that nature is very limited.
And specifically, what is ophthalmology?
Well, ophthalmology quite varied. I mean, they include strabismus, which is a misalignment of the eyes, or they may have cataracts, glaucoma, testified on behalf of patients or cases that I've been involved in.
Okay. So you haven't given an outside opinion, but you've testified on behalf of patients previously?
Correct. I don't recall ever having given an outside opinion.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Doctor, do you have a curriculum vitae?
Yes, I do.
And that curriculum vitae is a summary of your qualifications and...
Will be qualified, Dr. Young will be qualified in the area of pediatric ophthalmology. You may proceed.
Thank you. Doctor, as a pediatric...
So right there, he is, the judge is approving, the defense is not objecting to this man being considered an expert witness. So he's an expert witness. That's what that big spiel was about right there.
Pediatric ophthalmologist at Cincinnati Children's, are you ever asked to review cases involving suspected child abuse?
Yes.
Pursuant to such a request, did you come into contact with Hannah Weshy, date of birth 1/11/2015?
Yes.
When did you come into contact with her?
So I believe it was in 2016. Was that the date of? I didn't look at the date of the actual exam.
Okay.
The case,
Well, let me ask you this then. Did you prepare records when you did the exam, your results from that exam?
yes, I did.
And those would be part of the Cincinnati Children's medical records?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. right, if I may approach the state's exhibit 8 and 19.
You may approach.
Sorry. No, sir. And that's the scans. Record certification.
Injury that's severe enough to cause a little bit of bleeding. You anterior segment of the front part of her eye was normal. We dilated her eyes, and then we looked inside the eyes, and there
Doctor,
were
I'm going to
some-
stop you before we
Okay.
get to that
Okay.
point. You talked about some ecchymosis. What is ecchymosis?
So basically, if you have an injury that's severe enough to cause a little bit of bleeding, you can have kind of this bluish, purplish discoloration, indicating that there's been some blood there.
And I'm going to approach you with what has previously been admitted as State's Exhibit 46. Doctor, do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
So that's a picture of the patient.
And do you
question.
recognize, or you talked about ecchymosis, do you see that in that picture?
Yes, so there's ecchymosis of the left upper eyelid as well as a little bit on the left lower lid, and you can see maybe some discoloration, some bleeding as well on the side of the head.
Okay, doctor, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the screen. That's right there next to you. You see that State's Exhibit 46 there?
Yes, now it's clear.
Okay. Can you go ahead and circle the part that you're talking about when you, what you saw when you came into contact with her?
Yeah, so this is the area of ecchymosis, and there's a little bit here too.
Okay.
And
Do you know if that would have been there when you saw her on the 11th?
So this picture, I don't know when this picture was taken, but yes, I mean, I documented the fact that I saw ecchymosis on the, well, what I said was that I saw it on the left upper eyelid in the medial aspect. So there are actually a few more ecchymosis here than what I wrote on my exam, and
Okay.
so.
So when you're
This is-
talking about, I just want to,
Mhm.
if you could just circle the part that you saw when you examined her on March 11th.
Yeah, so I would say a medial aspect would be this area, generally speaking, but I couldn't be 100% sure that I didn't include this, or maybe there was an extension from here to there.
Okay. And I'm not seeing, you're not pushing hard enough, so we're not seeing
Oh.
what you're talking about.
So I thought I'm circling it. Is it not showing up
Okay,
there?
there it is. Okay.
Oh, okay, all right. It's showing up on my screen, but not there. So generally speaking, this would be the medial part, but you know, it's possible that I meant to include this part as well. I didn't mention
And
anything on the lower
you
eye.
said this part,
Sorry,
so-
this part
okay,
here.
thank you.
That would generally be more central, but it's possible that I included that. There certainly was something here, but that's a little bit off the eyelid. And this portion is on the lower eyelid. It's possible that that was milder and I didn't catch my attention. Or perhaps some blood, you know, may have shifted from part of the eyelid to another part of the eyelid, depending on how long.
Exactly.
This,
I agree.
you know, how much later this picture was taken.
All right.
Kelly has some qualities that I think I like. How do I say this?
Doctor, after you made initial contact and your external observations of Hannah, what was the next step of your evaluation?
Well, the next step is to go ahead and dilate the patient. And actually, the resident had already performed part of the external exam. And so if their examination of the external part and the pupils in particular, and there's a agreement by the primary team to allow us to go ahead and dilate the eyes, we then go ahead and put drops in the eyes that dilate the pupils, that allow us to then look inside the eye and examine the inside of the eye.
And in this
Okay.
case with Hannah Weshy, is that what you did?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to show you guys something, because I take pride in what I do. I went ahead and looked something up on Jason's Facebook page. And I posted it in, let's see, oopsies, there we go. Channel, post. Okay. Let's see. Go back to this, share screen. Okay. Here you go. This was Hannah at her first birthday party. Do you see those? I mean, what do you think that is on her chest? What do you guys think that is? Do you guys see that? All the way to the left there, that's like a birthmark, I believe, to the left. But you see those two? See those two, like, don't they almost look like bruises? Like, let me show you guys something else. Now, remember, this is her first birthday party. Okay. And let me look something up here. Okay. Right. Now let me get back to this and let me share this page with you. Yeah, the birthmark is over there to the left on the right by her, like right here, like by her armpit. But like I'm talking about in the middle, these are the two. So this is when she was 1 at her first birthday party. She was 3 years old and about 3 months. Her birthday's in January. This happened March 8th. Yeah, very cute, very cute. Let me share this now. Remember, you're a defense attorney and you have a jury there. So the middle marks are bruises. I'm asking what you guys think they could be. Now, that picture was on Jason's Facebook page. Okay. Now, do you see this where you have the thumbs? Oopsies. Your thumbs, if you're holding a child around, your thumbs. Okay. That's how you would shake a baby. Okay. And something that I just thought was just wow is we're looking at a picture here of her when she's 1. Lindsay didn't babysit her then. Lindsay didn't even know the family. And there's 2 marks here. Her attorney is literally the worst. I agree. And I'm saying I believe that those middle marks could be, you're holding, and you're shaking a baby. And what I don't understand is what my job would be to do as a defense attorney is to show this picture and to say, you know, Jason, she's been in your care. You're the primary care, provider. Did you have a first birthday party for Hannah? Where was it at? Do you recall this picture that you had on your Facebook? And it's to show that, what are those marks? It's like if you're holding somebody underneath the armpits, okay? And what are those marks? Could those be bruises there? She had a white cake, it looks like. See the frosting? Um, um, yeah, trust me, this is really hard. But I think that it's important that if you really believe in someone's innocence, as hard as it's going to be, but you have to ask yourself, this picture right here shows those two, which could be potential bruises. Those were on, that's where they were with when she went to the hospital. There was bruising, and what they were trying to say is that somebody was like, don't do that, Hannah. Don't do that. Knock it off. That's what they were saying, that these chest like, well, looks like she's got them here and she's one. Okay. Anyways, just wanted you guys to see something. It looks like burns to me. But what you want to be putting in the minds of your jury is, reasonable doubt. Like, what, she was in the hospital for 3 months right when she was born, addicted to heroin. That would be from, her mom being addicted, and like Jason had testified to. But yet they never called the actual, like, the mom to the stand. I mean, just a bunch of crap. Like, but this picture right here, the first thing I thought about was, I was like, what is that? Like, are those bruises? Do they look like it? Are they in an area that where she has stuff right now? Yes. So, is it possible? Because I'm not a doctor. What if you're shaken over time? What if, like, all the time to, like, get you to stop crying, somebody did that, and a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. Definitely could be thumbs. Okay, I see it way better. Definitely looks like bruises. Thank you, Muffy. Linear bruises like that are not naturally occurring, especially on the upper chest. Kids put their hands out when they fall. Yes. But I think that this would show that Hannah was not in the care of Lindsay when she was 1, and she has these marks. That's the route that you would want to go with this, and that's consistent with, if you're holding a kid like what I just showed you, the shaken baby syndrome pose. That's very close to where your thumbs would be around the body. No, these aren't birthmarks. These aren't birthmarks, Sandy. I don't think you're following. I can't believe that wasn't shown in court. I don't understand what these people did, what these defense attorneys did. I mean, it's 2019 was trial. Like, that's just not even 2 years ago, or just a little over 2 years ago. And I mean, social media is huge. This wasn't a private photo. You went through his Facebook to find that he did GoFundMe's. You don't see this picture? And you just have to simply say one question. Does Hannah have 2 birthmarks there? And the answer is going to be no. Well, so then what is that? Are those bruises? And if you're sitting on the jury, you're just like, wait a second, what? So, I mean, you'd have to ask, like I said, I'm not medical, but I'm very logic and I'm very foundation. And you want to put it in there that this little girl has been being abused for over the course of her life, where Lindsay wasn't involved in her life then. And that's kind of what you want to. Whew. Again, everything just leads to like reasonable doubt. So let's go back to. Sorry, I just wanted to explain what that community post was about, because I saw somebody posted about it being birthmarks. It's 100% not birthmarks. If anything, she has a birthmark over here. But those 2 marks there look like bruises to me. If they're not bruises, when you ask the question as to what they could be, it at least is enough to say that they could be. And those are very consistent with shaking a baby. Or that you've been squeezing and like your kids, stop it. So you like the squeezing. Well, again, Lindsay wasn't there for that. Lindsay didn't know. Lindsay didn't start watching Hannah until much later, many months. Okay, so sharing. Again, that's all public. That's a public picture.
Can you briefly describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you conduct one of these exams with the dilating of the eyes, and what comes next? What's that process?
Sure. So we put the drops to dilate the eyes, and then once the pupils are adequately dilated, then we have a special instrument called an indirect ophthalmoscope. It's like a little hat. You wear it, and then there's a light source, and then there's a 2 lenses that go over your eyes, and then you have another larger lens that you hold in front of you, and without going into the details of the optics, it allows you to see the inside of the eye in pretty good detail.
In preparation for your testimony today, did you prepare a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, I did.
If I may approach the witness with State's Exhibits 21 through 38.
You said, I'm sorry, 38?
21 through 38, yes. Doctor, go ahead and take a look at those.
Mod Squad was too busy talking about Dave's apology in chat, love. I don't think he didn't even know what he was apologizing about, Mod Squad. So I don't know if I would say that that's what's the word? I don't think that was sincere. You know, my mom always said when you apologize to somebody, you're apologizing for what you did. You know, you don't just say, hey, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? You know what I mean? Hey, Lana, I'm sorry for, but anyways, welcome. I was analyzing behavior. And then he just deletes it or privates the video. So I don't think he was that sorry. It's okay. I understand you're jealous of the way I get the ladies to mac on me. Thanks,
Yes.
Callie.
Doctor, what's the first slide there? What's the state's exhibit number on that?
21.
Okay. All right, doctor, having looked at those, are those the PowerPoint
Yes.
slides that you prepared? And are those that are marked as observations of the patient's eye, are those the observations you had of Hannah's
Yes.
eyes?
Yes, that's correct.
At this time, the state moves to admit state's exhibits 21 through 38.
Defense?
We have no objection.
States 21 through 38 will be admitted. You may publish at your will. 38.
The front part of the eye that you're seeing here, you can see the cornea, that's the clear shield that you see through, the iris, which is the color part of your eye, and then the pupil, which is the opening in the middle. Behind that is the lens, and then the white part of the eye is the sclera. There's some layers on top of that, the conjunctiva, but generally speaking, what you're seeing, the white part is the sclera. And then this cutaway allows you to see the inside of the eye, which includes the retina, which is a transparent layer that is like the film in the camera, kind of our analogy, and then the optic nerve, which connects the eye to the brain. And then you can see the blood vessels emanating from the optic nerve.
So when you are looking at a patient's eye, and when you would have been looking at Hannah's eyes, what are you looking at?
So we're looking at everything. We have a systematic approach to it. We look at the eyelid, as I mentioned earlier, and then we start from the frontal photograph of the fundus or the retina. You can see the optic nerve on the right side, and that looks, nice and clear. And then you have the normal retina. This little depression in the middle is what we call the fovea. It's the sharpest point of the vision. And then you're looking at blood vessels coming out from the optic nerve. And again, the retina is relatively transparent, so you're actually seeing through it to another layer of the eye called the choroid. So these are the things that we kind of look for.
All right. State's Exhibit 23.
So this is the piece we've had for a couple of decades at least. Earlier, this is the optic nerve, and this is the center of vision, and then you have the blood vessels coming out like so, just like before, except in this situation, obviously, the image is a little bit blurry, but it's adequate to see all the hemorrhages throughout. The hemorrhages are in different layers, and of the eye, the macula of the center is relatively spared. Sorry, that was in this area, and you can see enough of the optic nerve to see that there isn't any significant edema or swelling of the optic nerve. And like I said, the hemorrhages are too many to count. If we had a photograph, we could probably count them, but when you're looking at them, there's just so many of them.
Okay. Could you go ahead and just mark some of those hemorrhages, just that?
Yeah. So
that it's clear.
here's a hemorrhage. These are all hemorrhages here. You can see the blotchy redness there. This darker spot here, and here. These are all pre-retinal hemorrhages. So they're in front of the retina, possibly into the vitreous jelly, which is that clear jelly that fills the inside of the eye. And so it's either in the jelly or it's in the space between that jelly and the retina itself. You've got these dot blot hemorrhages that are intraretinal, and then there are some flame hemorrhages here. Just sounds just like that. It's like a flame spot, a flame streak that would be considered consistent with neurofibrillar hemorrhages.
Doctor, I believe we looked at an exhibit of what a normal eye looks like, and it doesn't have hemorrhages like you've described.
Correct.
Is that correct? And it says posterior pole. What does that mean?
Well, if you think of the eye like a globe, you have the North Pole, you have the South Pole. So we
Okay, let's do 29. Got
Okay.
there. You can go ahead and tell us what we're looking at in State's Exhibit 29.
Okay, this is the subject's
State's Exhibit 32 for the record.
superior, just meaning we're looking up now. Okay, and here again is the optic nerve from the previous, if you want to correlate this with the previous photograph. And this is probably the center of vision there.
State's Exhibit 34.
Okay, so this is the left eye, again, the central retina, posterior pole, however you want to describe that. Here's the optic nerve again. This is a perhaps slightly clearer image. We have vitreous hemorrhages here. We have dot and blot hemorrhages, and you've got some flame hemorrhages here and there, and blood vessels again. This is the center of vision. You can see some hemorrhages here and there near that area. And hemorrhage, and you can still see the hemorrhages out here.
Do you know what I see here? I see every single house wasting money. Why? Because there's a brand new stimulus program.
All right.
Trauma, abusive head trauma, that was the diagnosis in this
All
case.
right. All right. Doctor, if you could briefly summarize what all of that means.
So, so there is extensive hemorrhages in all three layers of the retina, and it goes far peripherally, at the very least to the equator. Think about the equator of the Earth, so the equator of the eye, you can still see the hemorrhages there. And the constellation of all those hemorrhages, the extensiveness of it, is the absence of optic nerve edema. Those are all most consistent with non-accidental trauma, abusive head trauma. That was the diagnosis in this
All
case.
right. And you said those are all consistent with non-accidental trauma. You said abusive head trauma. Are you referring to those as the same thing?
Well, those are different names that have been given. The diagnosis over the years. The most recent terminology would be abusive head trauma.
All right. And if you could explain to us what that means.
Well, what that means is that there is injury to the patient, thought to be from the violent shaking of the patient that can cause the vitreous jelly inside the eye to cause a shear force along the retina because it's attached to the retina, and as the two different substances move past each other, there is shearing of blood vessels that can lead to these hemorrhages.
Doctor, is it shaking alone or could impact also be involved in that?
Well, it depends on, so it could be both, but primarily it's thought to be the shaking. The patients who have just purely impact are much less to have hemorrhages, and the number of hemorrhages are much smaller, and they typically are not in all three layers or extensive like this. We see patients who've gone in through motor vehicle accidents, and as long as the eye itself is not directly traumatized severely, the mere fact that they have an impact on their head or something like that doesn't produce these kinds of hemorrhages.
So doctor, I know we've talked about it, but I'm going to ask you now regarding this non-accidental trauma, abusive head trauma. Based upon your training, education, and experience, and to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, what is your opinion as to the cause of the injuries that you saw in Hannah's eyes?
Yeah, my medical opinion is that it's due to abusive head trauma.
Abusive.
May I have just a moment?
Like multiple, like abuse? Like, what do you mean abusive?
Mr. Fagan, will you be doing the cross?
I am.
All right, you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thanks.
My jaw is so swollen. You would have thought I was giving cunnilingus the whole night. God. I got whacked. Callie.
I'm just getting ready. My name is Chris Fagan. We've never met. I represent the defense, and I have some questions.
Sure.
And just give me a second to get...
Okay, so this is the cross-examination now.
Do we leave defense exhibit stickers?
Llama.
I'm
What
not
do you
leaving
think?
the corner to use yours.
I just.
Well, I don't want to label multiple things at the same. While she's doing that, do you mind if I look at the exhibits that you have? Mostly I want to see your notes. Thanks. I was going to use Dr. King's report. She's going to testify later. I didn't want to mark mine. That's fine. Thank you. All right, so
So here's the cross.
let me start with this. First of all, good morning. I've heard you state two opinions in the case, one relating to the hemorrhages you saw in the eye. And you have to say yes or no.
Yes,
Okay. And then the second one about an ultimate diagnosis being abusive head trauma, correct?
yes,
And you would agree with me that those opinions are medical opinions,
yes,
and they do not identify a perpetrator in this case.
correct,
That's not your role.
correct,
You're a doctor, correct?
yes,
And you evaluate the medical evidence.
yes.
I was going to ask you about the mechanism of injury.
About the what?
I understood abusive head trauma to be a medical diagnosis that indicates a viewpoint that there was an abusive act that caused the hemorrhaging that was unknown to medical evidence. Is that your understanding of abusive head trauma?
I'm sorry, state that again?
Well, it's a bad question, isn't it? You testified that your diagnosis was abusive head trauma.
Correct,
And then you further testified that it was your belief based on the evidence that the mechanism of injury was shaking.
correct.
Method.
Okay.
Why?
Are you aware that that is not an opinion shared by the other doctors that the state has called or will call in this case?
I'm not aware of the testimony of the other doctors or what they plan to say.
I'm going to show you, and if I can approach the witness, I'm going to show you what has been marked as State Exhibit 11, and I will proffer to you that this evidence is going to be presented to the jury later today. You take a look at that, and it's the coroner's report in this case.
Yes, I've viewed it.
Okay, you have reviewed it? Okay.
Yes.
And it has the coroner's evaluation of internal injuries and its examination, and external, but also has conclusions, correct? On the front of it, on page 1. Take a look at those, and when you're done, I'm going to show them to the jury.
And I would object to that.
Let's approach. I can just cross off.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, you may hear testimony relating to the opinions, potential opinions of other experts in the case. Those experts have not testified yet. You are not to consider them at this point. For the truth of the matter asserted, they're not substantive evidence. They are strictly being presented in the presentation cross-examined at this point. So, Mr. Pagan, with that instruction, you may proceed.
Okay. All right. I want to explore the shaking issue with you. And you have in front of you a county coroner's report, correct?
Yes.
It's identified as an opinion.
Yes.
It's dated on 4/19/2018.
Yes.
It's signed by Dr. Dorothy Dean.
Yes.
She's a pathologist
Yes.
and a deputy coroner for Hamilton County.
Yes.
And I assume you've had contact with her in the context of this case?
No, I have not.
Okay. This is the first time you've seen this report?
No, it isn't.
Okay. You understand that her conclusion is that the cause of death was traumatic brain injury due to blunt impacts to the head?
Correct.
Okay. And that's different than a mechanism of injury that would be shaken?
Well, it could be both.
Okay. Well, a blunt impact is a blunt object
Yes.
having contact with the head, correct?
It could be that, or it could be in the act of shaking one's head, it strikes one's chest. And it's sufficiently flexible to be able to do that in various cases. So I'm not, I'm not aware of the evidence. I don't know that there's any blunt objects that were shown to be the instrument of, impact on the patient, but blunt could mean various things.
Okay. Nowhere in this report does the phrase shaking appear, correct?
Correct.
All right. Were you aware that, and when did you see Hannah? Do you know? Do you have the notes? I have the notes.
You mean what time of the day, or?
Not time of day, what day? You understand she was in the hospital?
Right, I think it was March 11th was the day that I consulted on her.
And do you know when she died?
I've either was told or saw the day of death as being approximately 10 days later, I believe.
10 days from March 8th when she presented.
Right,
Okay. So she died on March 18th.
that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, and then you have the report there that says that the autopsy was done on March 19th.
Yes.
And were you aware that Dr. Dean shaved the back of Hannah's head?
That's typical in terms of trying to look at the brain and skull.
Are you aware that she found a bruise that had otherwise not been discovered by Children's Hospital people?
Which one are you referring to? The subgaleal hemorrhage, or?
Yeah, in the back of the head?
So I did not compare what the other doctors found with what the
Okay.
coroner said, so I wasn't aware of that.
Are you aware that Dr. Dean immediately called law enforcement and explained to law enforcement that Hannah had a severe raised, swollen bruise on the back of her head?
Your Honor.
All right.
Sidebar. Sidebar.
And I apologize for the delay because I've lost my train of thought a little bit. But what I was getting at is Dr. Dean did an autopsy, correct?
Correct.
It was done on March 19th, correct?
Yes.
It was done after your eye exam of Hannah, correct?
Yes.
All right. The statement you gave to the jury was that you suspect that the mechanism of injury was shaking, correct?
Correct.
I pointed out to you that Dr. Dean has a statement about blunt impacts, which is different to a layperson than shaking,
Yes.
right? The literature indicates that when evaluating for shaken baby syndrome, the absence of blunt impacts is good evidence that shaking might have caused the injuries here, correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay. The existence of blunt impacts to the head is evidence that is the cause of the hematomas and the hemorrhaging, correct?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. You're aware that Dr. Dean, are you aware that Dr. Dean doesn't address shaking as a mechanism in her report?
No.
I'm not sure. Yes, I am aware of that, but I'm not aware of, coroners being empowered or routinely, not empowered, or routinely indicating that.
You're aware that on 3/20/18, are you aware that Dr. Dean called law enforcement because of her new finding that Hannah had a severe raised and swollen bruise on the back of her head?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. A severe raised and swollen bruise.
Objection, Your Honor. You just asked the question.
I'm going to ask a different question. I
Let
really am.
me hear the entirety of the question, and then we'll address it.
Do you agree with me that a severe raised and swollen bruise is a blunt impact?
It might be. I'm not qualified, I don't think, to actually interpret the coroner's finding. I have not had a history of correlating what coroners find and what the clinician evaluates and correlating those two. That's not been part of my training.
Okay. You have your notes there?
Which ones? My
The
notes.
from Children's Medical
Yes.
Hospital.
Yes.
All right. And maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but are you aware that the records, the total number of records in the Children's Medical Hospital records exceed 4,500 pages? Do you know that?
I didn't know that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yes.
Okay. And I assume you didn't go through them all.
I did not.
Okay.
4,500
And-
pages.
And the notes that you added to that 4,500 plus collection of medical notes is about 15 pages, correct?
Yes.
And you have it in front of you,
Yes.
more or less, correct?
Correct. This is all I remember putting in.
Right. And nowhere in that, those notes, do you address shaking or the mechanism of injury, correct?
Correct.
All right. And sometime in the summer of 2018, you engaged in some email correspondence with Kelly Hiley.
Yes.
And you're aware that that email was supplied to me as part of the exchange of documents in this case.
I understood that they were discoverable, yes.
Okay.
I didn't know that they were actually
All
sent
right.
to you.
And you were asked to either agree or disagree with the following statement. Hannah Weshy's injuries are consistent with abusive head trauma. Correct?
I haven't reviewed my emails with her, but
Okay,
It's
I can show it
possible.
to you.
okay.
It's possible, he said. It's possible.
You have one more, or is it-
No, I
I don't even know what he's saying.
I need a sticker.
So,
I got
so
one here.
let me get this straight.
And I'm gonna label this,
Let me get this straight so that I pass the test at the end of the class I feel like I'm taking right now. He does a 15-page report, and nowhere in his report he says these injuries are from shaking a child. Number one. Number two, he doesn't mention the word shaking, appears nowhere in there. He says that on March 11th is when he gave this, and it is abusive. Abusive. Not accidental. This is not accidental, but that this is signs of abusive. Anybody else? Yes, abusive head trauma versus accidental head injury. But what if you were in a car accident? A car accident would be accidental, but wouldn't you, like, if I was laying in the back seat or I was in the front seat and my daddy's doing donuts with Chris Davis because they're high as kites and I'm just getting thrown around in the back because they didn't buckle me in. That would be accidental. Exactly, pulled from his rectum without any supporting documents, recording records, imaging, or history. So, yes. He never mentions shaking, but then he mentions it here today. Okay. All right, continue on.
One-page email as Defense Exhibit B, I think. Can I press the latest? I'm not going to publish it.
Yeah.
Pickle juice, pickle brain.
All right. We'll do it later.
I mean, what's the problem here?
Let me be
Your
in your
email
personal
you wrote.
space, but this is just the easiest way to do it. That's Defense Exhibit B, or it will be a B when I can get the pen to write, okay?
Yes.
All right. And that's your name?
Yes.
Okay, that's your email address?
Yes.
To Kelly Hiley,
Yes.
okay? The date is 7/11/2018 at 2:58.
Yes.
It's in regard to Hannah Weshy with her date of birth.
Yes.
Okay. The question that I presented to you is presented right here, correct? Take time.
Yes.
All right. And your response was,
I agree, yes.
okay. So you agreed that her injuries that you observed were consistent with abusive head trauma.
Yes.
Okay. Nowhere did you explicate about your viewpoint that the mechanism of injury was shaking.
Correct.
So nowhere in your report, correct?
It's not in my report, correct.
Nowhere in your email.
Correct.
So for the very first time in the history of this case, from any note, document from you, you've introduced the issue of shaking, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that it comes as a surprise to the defense because it's never been presented from you in any other document?
Yes, I can see that.
How do you
I think you testified that you've not been an independent expert for third parties.
Correct.
All right. You've only been an expert witness for people that you've treated or seen.
Yes.
Okay. How many times have you been an expert witness?
In that sense, the second sense that you just described?
Yes.
I've only been in a trial once. I have done depositions less than 5-6 times, I would guess, or written letters on behalf of various legal counsel.
All right. And before I move on and forget, did you ever tell any of the agents here at the state here, the prosecutors, about your shaking mechanism hypothesis? Did it ever come out of your mouth?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's possible that it was assumed underlying our discussions, but I don't remember the verbatim details of every conversation we've had. I have supplied documents and some studies and things like that, where that's been listed as the presumed mechanism.
Okay, so you've had conversations with them?
Mhm.
You don't recollect using the term shading?
I don't recall specifically doing. I may have.
You may have, but you don't know.
I don't know for sure.
There would be no documentation to either support or undermine that premise, that idea that you communicated this to them.
Well, so
Is there a document?
no, I think I did talk to them about that, about the possibility of this. We talked about the various names.
Okay, I have a question. This is how I would word it. Mr. Doctor, whatever your name is. If I go skiing and I break my arm, and I break it, wherever I break it, how can you tell that I broke it skiing as an accident versus if my boyfriend came home, saw me having sex with a female, and then broke my arm? Or what's it if I fell down the stairs and broke my arm versus my boyfriend pushed me, fell down the stairs, broke my arm? How would you be able to determine the difference between accidental and abusive? Can that question be asked? And maybe, I don't know, we would understand what the fuck is going on. Like, wouldn't that be a good question to ask? Like, I'm asking, like, what do you guys think? I don't know. Abusive head trauma versus accidental head injury. So skiing might be an odd example. I've been pretty twisted up on the slopes. I know, I just, it's wintertime. So if I was to go skiing and broke my arm versus, impossible to determine with those data points alone. Exactly. So wouldn't you think that this is impossible to tell if this was what caused this? What would cause this? That's how you should be testifying right now is, yeah, this is what's present. I don't know what caused it. You would say, is it possible that she fell off of that train? Could this have been caused by that? Yeah, it's possible. Like, what the fuck is this defense attorney doing? What are you doing? I want to know how they don't have a job. How, if you watch this, hey, Hamilton County, watch this trial, and this is every reason not to hire these schmucks. But, like, you want him to be saying, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Like, don't they teach you this? How do I know how to do this? I didn't go to law school, and I know that I want that guy saying it is possible as many freaking times as I can get him to say, yeah, that's possible. And he's going to say, well, no, it's not possible because that's an accident if she fell off the train. But isn't it possible that her eye could hit the handlebars on it, or she hit something else? I mean, what makes it not possible? That really looks like a they're trying to make it seem like this is all like been concocted. Like this is a big, they all conspired together that we need to get her, that, this is Jason's the only other person. So if Jason can't be the one, it's got to be her. I just think that you have this guy, you have all these people by the nuts, and you're combing their hair or you're tying their shoes instead of clipping people's nuts. I mean, this is just embarrassing. I guess he didn't want to learn critical thinking. His goal was to just pass the bar. I just want to know, how can somebody that's a eye doctor, Jesus, that scared me. How can somebody that's an eye doctor tell me that this is, how do they know that's not accidental, but purposeful? If this is what's in our court. So people say, hey, why are you representing yourself? You know what? I watched that Lindsay Partin case, and that's why. It's just like,
for this, I mean, non-accidental trauma, it may not have been like a detailed discussion, but I think we may have talked about the fact that, there are various names for this entity: abusive head trauma. It's gone through evolution of terminology, non-accidental trauma, shaken baby syndrome, things like that. So the very fact that we may even have mentioned that phrase, shaken baby syndrome, would suggest that that's part of the thought of the what's going on here.
Okay. Did you ever put it to writing?
no.
I don't think so. I haven't reviewed all my emails, but I don't think I actually wrote that. But again, it's in some of the information packets about this. I think I sent a consensus statement of various medical societies, and that may have gone through. So if you want to look for the word shaking, it probably was in something that I sent.
To them?
Yeah, I think so.
Shaking to death. Get him on the accident train.
Do you remember sending a journal article to the prosecutor in this case?
Yes.
All right. It's about abusive head trauma.
Yes.
Okay. Is
An
that about
article.
shaken baby syndrome?
Well, it's just different terminology that we use. It has evolved over time,
Okay.
and I think it's in there because it covers some of the history.
All right. I'm not going to read this in front of the jury. It's many pages, but what I was getting at before about your experience in testifying, do you understand, and I think you do because you just did it, that the legal standard for opinions is a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
All right. And because you testified in a murder trial under oath to this jury about that, I would assume you know what that means.
Yes.
Okay. What does it mean?
Reasonable medical certainty?
Reasonable degree of medical certainty. What does it mean?
Yes, it means that based on evidence of the findings of the case, and then also the consensus and the best scientific evidence and opinions of the medical community, especially in my specialty of pediatric ophthalmology or retina specialists or all the other clinicians who are interested in this area, that this is the most plausible explanation for the findings of the patient.
Okay. So the level of certainty is what? Plausibility? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's the most plausible, it's the most reasonable, it's the one that does not have any other findings that are consistent with something else that could explain the findings.
The mechanism of injury being shaking,
Correct.
that is a possibility on these facts.
It's not only a possibility, but it's the most likely, and at the standard of medical certainty, that is the diagnosis.
Okay. You're stating your opinion on the fact that a shaking mechanism is the most likely, in your opinion, despite the evidence of substantial bruising and impacts upon Hannah's head.
Correct.
So is this jury led to, are you telling this jury that the,
You would say, so if you're shaking the baby, the child, that's what caused the eye. So the blunt impact to her head has nothing to do with anything. Right?
bruising, the substantial bruising to the back of her head is a less likely cause of her fatal injuries than a shaking mechanism?
No, you're asking about the fatal injury. Okay, so the fatal injury is different from the eye finding.
Okay.
Okay, so one can have both shaking and a traumatic impact, whatever that, the explanation for the extra bruise or any of other reasons, those can be fatal for
Okay.
different reasons, but the eye finding itself is most consistent with a shaking mechanism. So one can be shaken and have impact,
All right.
and that can lead to loss of life potentially. One can survive any of those things as well. And so we have patients who survive the shaking mechanism, they don't have impact, and they still have the eye findings.
Right, okay. So the eye findings are immaterial to the death and the mechanism of death in this case?
Correct. I mean, somebody could die or they may not die, and there are different age groups in which they may or may not be more vulnerable to and it also depends on what happened to them. I mean, there are patients who are just simply shaken, but they weren't actually struck on some object or other. So what I can say is that we see lots of patients who have severe head trauma from various other mechanisms, and they don't get this kind of hemorrhage.
Say the last part again?
They don't get this kind of hemorrhage.
Beginning, before that.
So we see lots of patients who have head trauma for other reasons, known reasons, witness reasons, like a motor vehicle accident or
Right.
something like that,
Right.
where it can be pretty severe, and we don't see these kinds of hemorrhages.
Right. But again, just so I'm clear, the eye injury that you're responsible for, that you have evaluated here, likely has you cannot connect the death or the cause of death in this case.
No, well, I try to say it a little bit more clearly. Shaking resulting in hemorrhages like this extensive hemorrhages are usually associated with some kind of severe brain injury. Whether there's any impact involved, you can still get swelling of the brain if there's no impact of the head on actual blunt objects. Now, it's possible that maybe the patient strikes their head on their chest and back and forth and things like that as a part of the shaking and may not reach this level of trauma that you observed by the coroner. But one can still get brain injury from that. Whether it actually reaches the point of causing death, is variable in terms of the patient. Many of them have cognitive damage even if they survive.
Isn't the fact of the matter that children's hospital professionals like you just missed the bruising to the back of the head? The impacts to the back of the head? It's true, right?
Well, I don't examine the back of the head.
Okay.
Okay. As to whether the other doctors missed it, I can't say. I mean, it's.
Well, you had 4,500 pages of medical records from Children's Hospital.
Well, I would say that there's an inconsistency, obviously, but if there are, were they asked to search every square inch of the body, I don't know what the protocol is on that side.
Okay, well, I mean, you got a patient that is presented to Children's Hospital with head injuries, correct? So an evaluation of the head would seem to be what the role of the medical professionals would be.
Right. So I agree that there's an inconsistency, and they may have missed it.
Thank you,
but
Susan.
I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't know if what children said in response to them. Was this part of the neurosurgery process? It hasn't been rolled out. Was there something else that caused a problem that they didn't find on initial evaluation? I just can't speak to that.
And that substantial bruising to the back of the head that was discovered by Dr. Dean on March the 20th is immaterial to your opinions and assessment.
Correct.
You've given two opinions here again, the hemorrhaging and then the abuse of head trauma, correct?
Yes.
That's the extent of your opinions.
Yes.
No more, no less.
Yes.
No, this is just the most.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you.
This has been a marriage, right?
That's the best. Hold on. Right here.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. This has been a marriage, right?
What did you want to ask him?
I'm going to show you this picture. Jamie, can we get that back on? Yes, let me show you the picture. I'm going to show you what's been labeled State Exhibit 46. Take a look at that while I ask my colleagues.
Don't copy off of me for this quiz, guys. I'll be like this in class. Oh, we have a pop quiz.
Action, Mr. Pagan. Hold on. Okay. Never mind.
I'm going to show it. It's been admitted, so I'm going to put it on the screen
Okay.
for the jury to see.
What the is going on?
Okay, and you see the image there?
Yes.
You identified it as Hannah? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and you went through with the prosecutor the eye bruising that you observed?
Yes.
And then I heard you make specific mention that you might have observed the bruising underneath the eye, but you had a concern that perhaps the blood might have shifted from one injury to another.
It's possible. I'm not absolutely certain.
Okay. And you didn't take this photograph?
I did not take this photograph.
You don't know when the photograph was taken?
No, I don't.
All right. But that was an important thing to you in your answer because you had to have either had a direct memory of the
Right.
patient or or know the date and time of the evaluation of the picture because blood shifts?
It can shift on the eyelid, or it may have been that I may have labeled that incorrectly. I'm not sure, but I did make note of ecchymosis on the eyelids.
So, I mean,
I
you
may
agree
have
with me
labeled
that
that
it would be
incorrectly.
problematic for a witness to identify bruises in a photograph where that witness doesn't know who took the picture, when the picture was taken, or where the picture was taken.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that's because the way the body operates, the way bruises are, blood shifts over time.
It might be that I just simply missed it in terms of my documentation of the eyelid, because that wasn't the critical part
I just simply missed it.
of my evaluation.
And it wasn't just part, I mean, what you're describing here wasn't in your notes, correct?
Correct. I agree that it's inconsistent with my notes. I only made a note of the upper eyelid ecchymosis, so I have to explain either the bottom part as being things that were so mild that it wasn't obvious at the time. I don't know what time this was taken. I certainly would willing to own that I may not have described it quite perfectly, but I did make note of the fact that there were ecchymosis of the eyelids.
Ecchymosis.
And to be careful and not to mislead, you don't want to say a particular mark on the body was what you saw when you don't have a memory of it. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't take a picture of it. Correct.
And because marks in the body can change over time.
They can.
I think I'm done, but I want to approach real quick.
Folks there, admonitions, no talking about this case, no researching. You guys know it at this point. I will be questioning you when you come back. And so we will go off the record, and counsel, if at any point you need to come back and chat, then the floor is open. Just come on back, okay?
Oh, for the fuck of love. Oh, God. Oh, my God. What were we going to do with ourselves? All right, guys. What do you guys think about that? How was that amazingness, right? What do you guys want to say about that? Anything? This is what I want to say about it. I would have raised my hand as a jury member and been like, I would like to be dismissed. I would like to be dismissed now. I am grabbing my jacket. I just realized that I had sex with one of those police officers and I needed to dismiss myself. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. First of all, it's just the damn eye doctor. Okay? I don't think he's, hey, is this possible? Is this possible? So it could be something else. I mean, that's what you normally get the people to say at the end of it. Is it possible that it could have been an accident? How can you tell the difference? I mean, what would your notebook look like? This is my notebook for him. Shaking appears, but nowhere in his 15-page note report. He had a email with the lady on 7/11/18 at 2:58 p.m. The email just said he answered yes to it being, abusive versus accidental. The other guy asked him about a 98-page article, but he wasn't going to read it for us because it's just kind of lengthy. He had 15 pages worth of a report, but there was over 4,500 pages in evidence of medical notes, but his was only 15 pages. He never mentioned the word shaking anywhere in his report, and but yeah, this these diagrams are definitely indicative of abusive, not accidental. But why? That's the only way that you get that is if you shake somebody. That's when that's going to happen. If you shake somebody, that's, I don't know. So yeah, I think if I was in the jury, that would be ex-nay, like useless. You didn't sell it to me that it was shaken and not stirred. So, ooh. Pretty girls can stay on my screen any day. What's up, Allie79? Yep. It's amazing. So what do you guys think about my pickles today? If I just chug the remaining juice of this. I can do picklebacks all day long. I feel like pickle juice makes me healthy. Boston. Hey, hon. The fuck you doing? Oh my god, I would love to drink your bath water. Me too. Save you some of my bath water. No problem. On it. Well, we have no more further questions for this witness. He's just a piece of shit. But, yeah. What a waste of an hour and a half of our time. F you. Oh. Lindsay Partin's gonna take the stand tomorrow night. But in the morning, I'll do this other. Who is this? What's this? Oh wait, hold on. I think they're fighting. Let me see.
The doctor's testimony that the retinal hemorrhages that he saw are most consistent with the shaking mechanism. And the argument is that was not provided by the state. I do want to note for the record that the state has always maintained that this is a diagnosis of abusive head trauma. This doctor had provided that this was consistent with abusive head trauma. That abusive head trauma in the medical world can be shaking and impact, or impact. It's not a distinct, but those are all possible mechanisms of that abusive head trauma. And I believe that has been known to defense, as well as the state has provided a bill of particulars where shaking is one of the alleged ways in which this may have occurred. Ultimately, and I want to also note for the record that the state filed a memorandum contra defendant's motion to continue trial back on November 27th. And in that, the state cited State v. Rich, 12th District, Butler, numbers CA 2012-03044, the Ohio site being 2013 Ohio 857. In that case, there was an argument that prior to the state calling the witness, the state provided defense with a PowerPoint presentation which contained additional information not initially in the report. The 12th District Court of Appeals stated that Criminal Rule 16 contains the word or, not and thus the state is not required to provide a written report with a summary of the expert's testimony, a summary of the expert's findings, a summary of the expert's analysis, or a summary, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong part. So the trial court, in overruling the objection at that point, found that Criminal Rule 16 does not require a summary of the expert's witness testimony and not, or it does require a summary of the expert's testimony and not a word for word, exact word for word. However, although I think that the case law would support this coming in, I'm not agreeing that it doesn't. The state does recognize that that specific piece of information was not known to the state and known to the defense. So we are in agreement with the court excluding that.
Thank you, Ms. Filey, and I do understand and note your distinctions. Who would like to be heard on behalf of the defense?
Well, I just.
For the record, Mr.
Yeah, I'll come up here so I know. For the record, we were on notice about Dr. Young's abusive head injury diagnosis, but that the full and extent
Yeah, it
of that
was.
diagnosis is contained on Defense Exhibit B that I cross-examined the doctor on. I'm happy to provide it to the court so it could be a part of the appellate record, and it just says, I agree, yes. Whether that's a sufficient summary or not, I would dispute. But I would like the court to know that in the doctor's 15 pages of notes, which is State Exhibit 19 and Defense Exhibit B, the only mention of abusive head trauma is 3 words, I agree, yes. And there's no mention of shaking. In the doctor's notes, there's no mention of shaking. In the abbreviated email of 3 words, it came as a surprise to me, it came as a surprise to the state, and we'd asked that it be stricken with respect to the instruction that the court is prepared to put forward.
Mr. Pagan, just because this is one of those points I have to clarify for the record's sake, is the defense of the opinion that any willful acts or discovery violations have been committed by the state?
No, we don't take that position, and we take our colleagues in good faith. There's been no documentation that I've seen that even hints at a Brady violation or a Rule 16 violation. And I understood the witness's testimony to be that he brought this up on his own and couldn't remember if he'd specifically said anything to the state or its agents. I see nothing to corroborate that it happened.
All right.
You know, our view on, whether or not this is material or not, but our view on 16K is that a report to comply with it has to have a summary of the expert's qualifications, a summary of the witness testimony, the findings, the analysis, conclusions, or opinion, and none of that would apply to shaking as a mechanism for any of these injuries. So.
All right, thank you. The court agrees with the state in recognizing that at least based on the evidence that the court has heard to this point, the terminology abusive head trauma is kind of a all-encompassing use of terminology that can cover certain actions, including but not limited to shaking. And that's where this issue becomes problematic. The court understands that all of the records, all of the reports that have been provided in relation to this particular witness have been consistent and stated abusive head trauma, which, as I've just stated, is a broader category. To my understanding and knowledge, neither party has come into this courtroom this morning understanding or expecting that Dr. Young was going to testify as to one of the specific mechanisms that's encompassed in that terminology. If I'm stating anything inaccurate, just somebody raise your hand and correct me, that's fine. That is my understanding of the situation. when the doctor goes from preparing reports and summaries and expert opinions and whatever that include this generalized category, and then for the first time narrows it down to one of a specified categories of behavior encompassed in that terminology. Nobody has any notice of it. The court recognizes, the state probably even suffered some prejudice as well in terms of how they prepared their case and arguments, whatever. But certainly, the court understands the defense. If they had known that the ophthalmologist was going to come in and offer that specific opinion, they would have at least looked into the possibility of getting their own expert to refute that finding, and they have not had opportunity to do such. So what the court is inclined to do after considering the matter, after also finding, and I think that the defense is not alluding to any bad faith, I'm not finding any bad faith, I have to look for the least restrictive measure of correcting this situation. I am going to give a limiting instruction to the jury that they cannot consider the testimony of the doctor in regards to the shaking specific mechanism that was provided on the stand. And so the record is clear, and I'll allow both attorneys to hear both sides, but when I say both attorneys, I mean all attorneys, to hear this for potential input. My intention is to instruct the jury, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard testimony from Dr. Young. You are to disregard any testimony from the witness that the causation of the retinal injuries was from a shaking mechanism and that any potential resulting brain injuries therefrom. This is due to testimony that was not presented to either the state or the defense prior to trial." So that is what the court intends on instructing the jury. And again, the case law is well established that the court has to presume the jury will follow that instruction. So either side wish to be heard on the proposed instruction.
Nothing on behalf of the state.
No, sir.
All right.
Go ahead.
No, if you have something to add, go ahead.
Well, I just, going forward, I think they're going to instruct, and then I don't know who the next witness is. I just for scheduling, I'd like everybody to know that I understand there's two other doctors, Dr. Dean, and then who will be a substantial witness, and then a treating Children's Hospital doctor who's a fact witness, who I wouldn't spend nearly as much time with. So, and it's almost new.
Well, for scheduling purposes, because we are in the redirect, and I don't know how much redirect recross is going to be, we'll...
Yes, that is Monica Lewinsky's cousin there, Allie. Monica Lewinsky is present in the courtroom. Welcome, Red Viper. Saddle up. Saddle up. Saddle up. So I guess there we have it. They are instructing the jury to you can't listen to his testimony about anything to do with shaken versus stirred. And I mean, what a shit show. What a shit.
That obviously with this particular witness, then my plan is to resign.
That's Lindsay.
I'm going to do it from here if it's okay. Fine. Am I invading your personal space?
No.
Okay. All right. I gave you Defense Exhibit B before.
Yes.
Okay. That's the email correspondence between you and the state with respect to your opinion about abusive head trauma.
Yes.
It's 3 words.
Yes.
I agree, yes.
Yes.
All right. Certainly, if you considered and excluded other diagnoses, it's not reflected in that report, is it?
Correct.
And it's not reflected in your notes.
Correct.
Your notes being State's Exhibit 19.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Young, thank you very much. Is this witness potentially subject to recall?
No, thank you.
Dr. Young, you are released from your
Dr.
subpoena,
Young, you just
but
got
please
fired.
do not discuss your testimony with any other potential witnesses, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I note that it's 11:30. I have been told, as we've been planning the scheduling of all this, we believe that the next witness can be accomplished probably no later than, say, 12:50 at the latest. So I'm going to push ahead, since you guys have just come back from a break, you should be nice and refreshed. We will push ahead with the next witness, and then we will accommodate the lunch period, okay? Who's the state's next witness?
Dr. Ranji Chima.
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 All right.
And what are your current duties there at Cincinnati Children's?
I am one of the physicians in the pediatric ICU or the intensive care unit, and I take care of critically ill children.
All right. Thank you for doing that. In that capacity, were you working at Cincinnati Children's between March 8th, 2018 and March 8th?
I have been examining Seeking the Truth with Dave's perversions. I'm sorry. That's inappropriate. I've been seeking the truth with Dave and his perversions. I've been doing it for 4 years. He's escalated in his behavior. He's out of control, and he is seeking my help.
18th, 2018.
Yes, I was.
Did you have occasion to come into contact with Hannah Weshy, date of birth 1/11/2015?
I did.
And as a part of your duties there, is it your job to review and understand the procedures that this child has undergone in your care?
Yes, so for all children who are admitted to the intensive care unit, I was the supervising doctor and was responsible for care of this child during the stay in the ICU.
And as part of your duties there, do you also prepare progress notes and documentation of your care of a child?
We do that daily, yes.
All right, if I may approach the witness with State's Exhibit 150.
You may.
Children's Hospital.
That you're,
So from when I took over her care, all the surgical procedures had already been done.
all right.
So when I took care of her, at that point, the surgical procedures had been done, and from when I took care of her onwards, there were no new surgical procedures performed.
All right. And when did you take over care?
I took care of her on the 9th of March.
And did you, 2018, thank you. And how long did that care continue?
So it was for a week.
In your care, did Hannah ever regain consciousness?
No, she did not regain consciousness.
Did her condition change in your care?
Her neurologic condition continued to deteriorate under my care, and that was what changed predominantly.
Doctor, can you tell us whether or not there was ever a determination of brain death in this case?
There was a determination of brain death in this case, and that was what was performed ultimately that led to her death.
Do you recall on what day the condition progressed or changed significantly in your care?
I'd have to look at the records, but it was about 3 days into her being in the hospital, it became clear to us that we would not be able to reverse the processes or even temporize what was going on in her brain. And at that time, we started thinking about doing a formal assessment of her brain by doing what we call a brain death examination. And so it was about 2 or 3 days into her course at Children's Hospital that it became very clear that this may go down the path of brain death.
Now, did that brain death evaluation then occur 3 days into her care?
No, it could not occur 3 days into it because for us to do a brain death examination, the patient has to have no medications in their system that would actually blunt or sort of cloud the neurologic exam, And she had gotten a lot of medications to induce a coma to help her brain and the pressure in her brain. And the levels of one of those medications was too high, and that precluded us doing a brain death examination.
So when ultimately were you able to do the brain death examination?
So I don't remember the exact date, but it was done. I had finished my week and I had passed it on to my partner who had taken the case over, and we were just waiting for those levels of the drug to come down to a level where we would be able to do it. And that was done the day she was pronounced, is the day it was done. And so when the level came down, we were able to do it.
During your care of Hannah Wesley, were you able to see visible external injuries on her?
So while in the intensive care unit, we children are kept pretty still, and what I was able to observe was some bruising that was notable on her upper chest. And I didn't really turn her much because we were in a medically induced coma and she was so fragile at that state. So we don't like to move patients a whole lot. And so didn't really look at her back a whole lot, but definitely in the front when I used to examine her every day, we didn't notice bruising.
Oh.
What's up, Jamie?
And could any of the care that Hannah received within the ICU have caused external injury to her?
No,
And why not? How do you know that?
because children who have had sustained very severe brain injury, we keep them very, very
Yes.
still.
It goes beyond observations and what I did and is now analysis or assessment. Exceeds a fact witness.
Let's approach it.
An ICU regarding a patient with a brain injury. So if you could go ahead with that.
So for children who have severe brain injury like this patient had, we keep them very still, and they actually get medicine that actually prevents them from moving, and also medicine that keeps them relatively in a comatose state, which she was getting. And so they don't really move spontaneously around. We actually don't even try to move them at all for any procedures and all if we can avoid them, because the very act of movement may increase the pressure in their brain, which we don't want to happen.
Nothing further.
Hi, thank you. Mr. Megan, any cross?
Just a couple.
You proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, still.
Good morning.
My name is Chris Pagan. I'm a defense attorney. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of questions. Do you appreciate or understand that you've been presented by the state of Ohio as a fact witness?
Yes.
Okay. So you've described your observations and what you did? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that you have not been qualified as an expert to supply opinion evidence to this jury?
Yes.
And nothing that you've said in your direct testimony is an opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any redirect?
No.
Subject to recall?
No.
Dr. Shima, you are excused. You're discharged from your subpoena, which means we're not going to be bringing you back. Do, however, ask that you do not discuss your testimony with any other anticipated witnesses, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir, and what's your step coming down?
Thank you.
Charged for lunch. Please keep your lanyards on and your notebooks and else to address before we go off the record.
All right. There you go. Beautiful Boston. I'm still catching up. Can't keep missing lives though. Lives. That is a fact witness. So that was the objection there is you can't give any of your opinion. You're just simply talking about facts. The facts of life. He does mention upper chest bruising that he saw. They keep their patients very still from moving with the medicine. She was coma induced for that surgery that they did on 3/8. Jason started to GoFundMe on the 12th of March. She was pronounced dead on the 18th of March. Oh. I was trying to understand. He wasn't giving us any dates, which I thought was really weird. I'll have to go hunting for that. Loves. She never regained consciousness. They couldn't do the brain death test. I'm gonna look into that. I never heard of that before, but I should say I never heard of it. I've just never. It's just yeah, but 312 was the GoFundMe. Jason doesn't have that many friends on Facebook or anything like that. That GoFundMe only raised $10,000. I looked at it today. It's on his Facebook page. Again, this is all public. Chris Davis's sister has had run-ins with the law, drugs, and CPS. He lived with his sister. And yeah. Just so you guys know, her cousin, Lindsay's cousin, said that TJ, who owns Smith Corp, his father, him and his family, there was no truck that was running that day. So there was no truck that they couldn't find a truck that had been running, like the keys in and it running. I mean, don't you think that would be like a good person to, like, I don't know, take the stand and testify to that? To, you know, did you find this truck that was running with the keys in? No, there was no. I mean, what truck does he normally drive? I also found what's her name? I found the Maggie Smith. I believe it's his sister, and she pretty much, like, she runs like the, you know, she's in the office and whatnot. So I'm hoping maybe Maggie Smith will just slip me, hey, who'd you guys employ back then? Who was doing drugs? You know, who maybe could put Chris and Jason and Hannah all in the same vehicle together that evening. Again, right now, everything I've looked at and everything that makes sense to me is that Chris was still in that home. His suitcase was there. He was still there when he took Hannah to go to Lindsay's. That Chris was still in that house and that he was going to go to work. That's what makes most sense to me, and that he had to hurry up and get him out of there. So, you know, I mean, did Chris take did Chris have a friend pick him up? Did Chris get an Uber? But he, like, left in a hurry, or like he maybe just had to, like, run to the house. I don't know, but who just leaves their suitcase? I mean, who leaves their suitcase and never goes back and gets it? I mean, or did he, and they're just all lying about it? Did Jason phone Chris and say, hey, the sheriff's department's coming over to my house to take pictures. You know, you got to get out of there really quick. Just go down, take a walk and go down to the barn or something like that. Or go hey, I left the truck running, go shut the truck down. Go shut the truck off. I left that truck running, grab the keys. So the questions would be like, what keys did you use to start the truck? And he can't say, oh, they're on my car keys because his car was still running. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, he would have had to have separate, you know, keys for that truck because his car was left running because he was in it waiting for the truck to get warm. So it's like, okay, well, when did you ever go back and get your keys to your truck or to that truck? Or like just when all of this happened, you know, you're not even thinking about that because obviously you're, you know, your daughter's in the hospital. She's having surgery. She's having brain surgery at that. But maybe you can get him to slip up and say, oh, his truck keys were actually on his car on the same key ring. Maybe get someone to testify to that. I mean, did Jason ever turn in those keys like when he was done working for the company? Just really sketch. I mean, do you think his attorneys ever said to her, hey, there's no more covering for people. So if you have any reason to believe that anybody was doing anything that's not okay or not right, if they were involved with shit, like, don't you think that Lindsay would have spoke up? I mean, did her attorneys not even ask that? I mean, when you look at pictures of that house, where is the mom? Her name's Adrian. I peeped her on social. She got to see Hannah once a week. Jason would take her. Jason would tag this woman, the mom, in like different pictures that he would do on Facebook back in the day. And she would see Hannah once a week. That's what Jason testified to. I don't know if that was happening. There was really no pictures of them on her social media page. She's never posting about her. The mom isn't that much older. So, basically the mom just wasn't, you know, she has a pretty extensive record too. She's a felon, drug problem. She's tampered with evidence before. She has an OVI. She has another kid right now. She has a little, he would have been, I think he's like 2 or 3 now. Jason and the mom started dating January 1st of, yummy. They started dating basically a year before Hannah was born. But they've known each other supposedly since 2013. I peeped them. So 2013, they knew each other. They first met. 2014, they started dating. Hannah was born in 2015. So, yeah, it does. But we're making moves. So I'll catch you guys all back here soon. Rest up. Good night. Thank you guys for hit the thumbs up. Thank you, mods. Thank you guys. A couple new members. Thank you so much. And make sure you guys don't send anybody your nudes or sex with anybody online right now. It's the YouTube streets are real rough right now. So a lot of hornballs. Be careful out there. Take care.